This is how to manifest love as so real it feels like fate. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Neville Goddard. Fate leads the willing and drags the unwilling. Seneca. Introduction. Every great love story has the same suspicious detail in it, and nobody ever questions it at the wedding. The wrong train. The canceled plan. The friend who insisted, the rain that started, the seat that happened to be free. Ask any couple who feel fated to each other how they met, and you will hear a chain of accidents so unlikely, so perfectly timed, that the only word anyone reaches for is destiny. It felt like fate, they say, glowing. And everyone nods because everyone wants to believe that somewhere in the machinery of the world, a love is being assembled for them too, and will one day arrive on a wrong train of its own. Here is what this book is going to show you, and I warn you now, it will change how you hear every love story for the rest of your life. The feeling of fate is real. The wrong train is real. And underneath the accident, every single time, there is an author. Trace any fated meeting backwards, honestly, step by step, and the miracle dissolves into something far stranger than magic. She was on the wrong train because, 3 months earlier, something in her had quietly decided to stop shrinking her life. He spoke to her because, for a year without telling anyone, he had been becoming a man who speaks. The accident was the last visible inch of a long, invisible construction, and the construction had a builder, and the builder was the person the miracle happened to. Fate, in every story you have ever envied, was authorship, experienced from the outside, which means the question of your life is not whether destiny will choose you. The question is what you have been writing, and whether you are ready to write on purpose. Because this is the whole secret of the title. Love that feels like fate is not found by the lucky. It is manufactured backwards in the inner rooms by ordinary people who learn the craft you are about to learn, and then it walks into their outer life wearing the costume of coincidence, so convincing that even its own author gasps. 10 chapters. In the first 3, we take fate apart, so you see exactly what it is made of and what you have, unknowingly, been manufacturing until now. In the middle 4, the craft itself, the authorship, the nightly work that writes a love into the fabric of your days. And in the last 3, the arrival, how it travels, how to recognize it, and how to receive a miracle you secretly built without breaking the spell. One promise before we begin. Do this work fully, and the day will come when someone looks at you across an ordinary table, in the middle of an ordinary evening that neither of you planned, and says, "Doesn't this feel like fate to you?" And you will say yes, and you will be telling the truth twice. Before we get into the book, comment, "It is written," to affirm your intention to the universe. Part 1. The Anatomy of Fate. Chapter 1. The Manufactured Miracle. Let me tell you about a couple I knew and the story they tell at dinner parties and the story underneath it. The story they tell goes like this. She never took the early train. Never in 4 years of the same commute. But one gray Thursday her landlady's pipes burst, and she was flooded out of her morning and found herself on the 710 among strangers, and the only free seat was beside a man reading, of all things, the very book she had finished the night before. She said something. He answered. The train was delayed 40 minutes by a fault on the line. 40 minutes neither of them ever got over, and they were married within 2 years. Fate, say the dinner guests every time. Written in the stars. Now the story underneath, which I only learned because I knew them before. 6 months before the burst pipe, that woman had come out of a long gray relationship and made, in private, a series of small, violent decisions. She started reading again, which she had abandoned for years, because the gray relationship had mocked it. That book on her lap existed in her life because of an inner vow. She had also decided, somewhere unspoken, to stop being invisible in public, to look up, to answer strangers, a decision she practiced in 100 tiny moments no one witnessed. And the man was on that train because he had changed jobs, a change he made after a year of quietly refusing to stay a smaller version of himself. And he was reading in public visibly, because reading was the last thing his loneliness had not managed to take from him, and he had decided it never would. Do you see it now? The burst pipe was luck. Everything the luck landed on was authored. Take away her vow and she has no book on her lap and nothing to be spoken to about. Take away her practiced looking up, and she says nothing to the man beside her, as she had said nothing beside 1,000 men for years. Take away his refusals and he is not on that line at all. The 40-minute delay did not build that marriage. It revealed a construction that two people had been building blind from opposite ends for the better part of a year, and when the ends met it felt to both of them exactly as it should have felt, like fate, because neither of them could see their own hands. This is the first law, and everything else in this book stands on it. What you call fate is the visible tale of invisible authorship. The world is not divided into the destined and the passed over. It is divided into people who write by accident and people who write on purpose. And until tonight, you have been in the first group, which is why your results have looked like luck, good and bad, arriving from nowhere. Nothing has ever arrived from nowhere. Every miracle and every disaster in your love life pulled into the station on rails that were laid earlier, further back in the inner country where you were building without knowing you were building. You will tell me, but I have been through things I never would have written, betrayals, droughts, people who came in wearing one face and stayed in another. I did not author that. Let me stop you there gently, because this is the moment the whole teaching either lands or curdles, and I will not let it curdle. This law is not blame. You did not choose your wounds, and you did not deserve 1 hour of what careless hands did to you. What the law says is smaller and stronger than blame. It says the pen exists. It says that the same mechanism that assembled your hard chapters from old unexamined instructions can assemble the next chapters from new deliberate ones, and that this is the best news you have ever been told, because a world where love is truly random cannot be changed, and a world with a pen in it can. Welcome to the backstage. That is the name for where you now stand, behind the theater of your own love life, looking for the first time at the ropes and the rigging that have been producing the show all along. Most people live and die in the audience of their own story, applauding the faded scenes, weeping at the cruel ones, never once suspecting there is a backstage at all, let alone that they have been up in the rigging the entire time, pulling ropes in their sleep. You have just walked through the door in the scenery. It is disorienting back here. It is also the only place in the theater where anything can be changed. Here is your first practice, and this book will hand you one at the end of every chapter, because a law you do not use is just a lovely sentence. The fate autopsy. Tonight, take one arrival from your own past, one meeting or one ending that has always worn the costume of pure chance, and walk it backwards the way I walk the train story, not the event. The rails. What inner decisions, what quiet becomings, what unexamined instructions had to already exist for that accident to land the way it landed. Write it out plainly until you can see at least 3 of your own hands in it. This will unsettle you. Let it. You are not looking for guilt. You are looking for proof in your own handwriting that the pen has been in your hand all along. And learn to recognize the 3 costumes the manufactured miracle wears, because your own past is full of all 3. The first is the rescue accident, the person who appeared exactly when you were drowning and felt sent. Walk it backwards, and you will find that drowning people reach differently, choose differently, say yes to doors they walked past for years, and that the rescuer was standing where your desperation had finally consented to look. The second is the collision accident, The meeting born of apparent disaster, the crash, the loss, the plan in ruins, and it feels most like fate of all, because who would author a disaster? Nobody. But look at what met the disaster. The self that walked out of those ruins toward that particular stranger was built earlier in quieter rooms, and disasters do not create character. They audition it. And the third is the timing accident, the one where you both say, a year earlier it never would have worked, and you are exactly right, and the reason is not the stars. A year earlier, two unfinished authors held unfinished pages. The meeting waited, as meetings do, not for a date, but for two drafts to be ready for each other. And readiness, as you now know, is written, not issued. Fate is authorship seen from the front row. Carve that somewhere, you will find it at night. But knowing there is a pen is not the same as knowing what it has been writing. Because right now, tonight, an instruction is running in you, a description of who arrives in your life and how they treat you, and you did not write it on purpose, and you have never once read it, and it has been filling every role in your story with terrifying accuracy for years. Before you write anything new, you must read what is already on the page. That is Chapter 2. Chapter 2. The Casting Sheet. In the old theaters, before a single actor walked through the stage door, a document existed. The casting sheet. A page pinned up backstage describing exactly who was wanted, the age, the bearing, the type, the temperament, and here is the thing every stage manager knew and no lover ever learns. The sheet does the choosing before the choosing happens. 100 actors might pass through the door, but only the ones matching the page get called back. And the play, night after night, fills itself with what was written, because a description, posted long enough, becomes a destiny. You have a casting sheet. That is the second law, and it is the one people fight hardest. So stay with me. Somewhere below your conscious wanting, assembled out of childhood weather and old wounds and every love you ever watched or survived, hangs a page describing who gets the part in your story. Not who you wish would get it, who qualifies, what treatment feels like love because it feels like home, what kind of attention reads as chemistry and what kind reads as boring, how much respect the role of you is written to require, and how much neglect it is written to absorb. And the world, which is the most obedient casting office ever built, has been filling your story from that sheet with a precision that should take your breath away. Do the arithmetic you have been avoiding. Line up your last 3 significant loves and look, honestly, not at their differences, which is where the heartbroken always look, but at the common denominator. Different faces, different names, and underneath, the same essential audition passed. The same emotional distance or the same beautiful chaos or the same initial worship curdling into the same eventual carelessness. 3 different actors, 1 sheet. You have not had bad luck in love. You have had accurate casting from a page you never read, and the proof is the repetition because luck does not repeat. Instructions repeat. You will tell me, this is too dark. You are saying I asked for the ones who hurt me. Let me stop you there and hear the difference because it is the whole difference. A child who learns that love comes braided with withdrawal did not ask for that lesson. It was written on them by hands that should have known better at an age when they could not refuse the ink. But the sheet, once written, keeps casting until it is read and revised, and no one else can read it for you, and no one else's hands can revise it now but yours. This chapter is not an accusation. It is a key to the casting office, handed to the only person with the authority to use it. And understand what revising actually means, because the desperate always try to revise at the wrong end. They meet another matching actor, feel the old familiar audition passing, and try to rewrite the person. You cannot rewrite actors. They are simply reading for the part as posted. You rewrite the sheet in the quiet in advance, and the astonishing thing, the thing that will feel like magic in 6 months, is that the auditions change. The ones who used to feel like electricity begin, mysteriously, to feel like weather you have seen before. And a kind of person who used to read as invisible, as too easy, as no spark, begins to register, because the page has stopped requiring the old poison as proof of love. Welcome to the casting office. You now hold its key, and the work inside is slower than a wish and faster than a lifetime. Word by word, the old requirements come down. Must be hard to win, struck out. Must feel slightly out of reach, like the first love who was always leaving, struck out. Will mistake my patience for permission, struck out with a shaking hand. And word by word, the new sheet goes up, written not as a list of luxuries but as a list of laws, warm without being begged, steady without being boring, because steadiness was never the boring part, the sheet just said it was. Delighted by me visibly on ordinary days. Here is the practice, the audit and the rewrite. Tonight, 1 page, 2 columns. In the first, the common denominators of your actual castings, the qualities your last loves truly shared, written without mercy and without self-savaging, the way an auditor writes because it is only information. In the second, the revision, 5 lines, present tense, describing who now qualifies, and read that second column aloud once, slowly, because the casting office of you takes its instructions, always has, in your own voice. And know the 3 inks the old sheet was written in, because you cannot revise handwriting you have never identified. The first ink is the first home, the original theater of love, where a child sat in the audience for years learning what the part of the loved one looks like when cast, and whatever played nightly on that stage, tenderness or tension, presence or performance, got written down as the definition. The second ink is the first heartbreak, which writes in scar tissue, adding clauses no parent ever penned, must not be given full power, must be tested before trusted. And scar clauses are the hardest to strike because they were written in genuine blood. And the third ink is the compensation vow, the sheet edited in reaction. The child of chaos who wrote must be utterly safe, and cast, for decades, an utter safety so total it never once caught fire, or the child of coldness who wrote must burn and cast a procession of magnificent arsonists. Read your own page for all 3 inks tonight, because a type, which the world tells you is a preference, is almost never a preference. A type is a sheet, inherited, scarred, and compensated, and the day you can name which ink wrote which line is the day the pen changes hands. The world fills the roll as posted. Post carefully. But a corrected sheet is only half the machinery, because casting sheets say who may arrive, and there is a second document that says where they can find you. The world, it turns out, does not deliver to your wishes or your worth or your postal address. It delivers to something else entirely, something you have been setting every day of your life without knowing it, and until you learn to set it on purpose, even a perfect casting will circle your life like a letter with no house number. That is chapter 3. Before we get into the next chapter, you can download a free ebook version of this audiobook completely free. It's the first link in the description and in the pinned comment below this video. Chapter 3. The feeling is the address. There is an old story told in the Imaginal schools about a woman who prayed for love every night for 10 years on her knees, with tears, with her whole voice, and love never came. And she went at last to one of the old teachers and demanded to know why the universe was deaf. And the teacher asked her one question. Not, what did you ask for? He asked, what did you feel like all those years when you got up off your knees? And she was silent because she knew. She had felt unloved. 10 years of asking for love performed inside 10 years of feeling its absence, and the teacher nodded and gave her the sentence this whole chapter exists to give you. The world does not answer your requests, he said. It answers your address. And your address is what you feel. Sit with this until it rearranges you, because it is the mechanism under everything else in this book. Wanting love and feeling loved are not neighbors. They are opposite countries. Wanting is the felt experience of a lack, rehearsed. Every night that woman knelt down and performed with total sincerity the emotion of love's absence, and the world which reads feeling the way the post office reads ink delivered accordingly, more absence, correctly addressed, for 10 faithful years. She was not being punished. She was being answered with terrible obedience at the only address she ever occupied. And before you despair at the unfairness of it, that the lonely must somehow feel loved before love arrives, that the system seems rigged against the very people who need it most, stop and look at the loophole, because the loophole is the whole craft. Feeling does not require circumstance. That is the secret the schools guarded and the desperate never guess. You have wept at films about people who never existed. Your body has flushed with fear at footsteps that turned out to be the house settling. The feeling apparatus of a human being runs on images, inner ones as readily as outer ones, which means the feeling of being loved is available tonight. To you, exactly as you are, single as you are, through the same door your fear and your grief have always used. Imagination, taken seriously, held sensorily, is not pretending. It is address relocation. You will tell me, but feeling loved before anyone loves me is a lie, and I refuse to lie to myself. Let me stop you there, because you have the direction of the lie backwards. You are lying to yourself now. The current feeling, the unloved address, is built on a false report, the report that says your worth is unproven until claimed, that love is elsewhere, that the present is empty. None of that is fact. There are people this minute who would count your presence a gift. The love that is coming, if you write it, already exists in the same way harvest exists in seed. Feeling loved tonight is not fiction. It is early accuracy. You are simply the first to know. Welcome to the address. From tonight, you hold the pen that writes it, and the writing is done in the last soft minutes before sleep, when the feeling body believes whatever it is shown. You will not beg there. Begging is the old address with better vocabulary. You will not visualize like a person watching a screen either, because watched pictures move nothing. You will enter, briefly and warmly, the felt state of a person for whom it is already true, and you will fall asleep at that address. And the post of the world, slow at first, then unmistakably, will begin arriving there. The practice. The address check morning and night. At night, the relocation, 2 minutes of genuinely feeling what the loved version of you feels, warm, claimed, easy, and sleep entered from inside that. And in the morning, before the day writes on you, the reading, one honest question: where did I wake? Not to judge the answer. To know it, because a person who knows their address can change it. And a person who never checks will spend years wondering why everything they ordered keeps being delivered somewhere they used to live. And since an address you cannot locate cannot be changed, learn to read yours in the small daylight moments where it publishes itself hourly. Watch what happens in you when a compliment lands. The person at the address of loved receives it like mail, thank you, a smile filed. The person at the address of unloved treats it like a billing error, deflecting, discounting, explaining it away, and the deflection is not modesty. It is a return to sender stamp, applied by someone who knows at the level of address that this cannot be for them. Watch what happens when kindness arrives unearned, when someone simply does something warm for you out of nothing. Suspicion, calculation of the debt, the quiet bracing for the catch, all of it is the unloved address reading its mail. And watch, above all, your imagination when it idles, because the idle mind always drifts home. Where do your unwatched daydreams go? To scenes of being cherished, or to rehearsals of being left, arguments won against people who have not yet wronged you, abandonments pre-lived for practice. That drift is the most honest address reading you will ever take, and every practice in this book is, at bottom, a slow change of what your mind does when nobody, including you, is steering. Prayers tell the world what you lack. Feelings tell it where you live. It only ever ships to the second. And now the anatomy is complete. You know what fate is made of, you have read the sheet, you have found the address, and everything so far has been diagnosis. What comes next is the craft itself, the nightly authorship, the single practice around which every school of this work in every century has secretly revolved. It fits inside 10 minutes and it will not leave you as it found you. That is Chapter 4, and it is the center of this book. Part 2. The authorship, Chapter 4. The scene. Every school that ever taught this work, under whatever name, in whatever century, arrived at the same discovery and hid it in plain sight because it sounds too small to be the treasure. The instrument of authorship is not the vision board, not the list of qualities, not the 100 repetitions of a hopeful sentence. It is one scene, short, ordinary, sensory, and implying the wish already fulfilled, entered nightly with feeling until the deeper mind files it where it files memories, and then defends it. And then, because the deeper mind tolerates no contradiction between its files and your world, quietly begins rearranging the world to match. Learn the anatomy of a working scene, because almost everyone builds them wrong. The amateurs build the wedding, the beach at sunset, the cinematic peak, and the peak fails every time for two reasons. It is watched, not entered, a film seen from a seat, and the feeling body does not relocate for films. And it is an event when what the deeper mind needs is an implication. The masters build the Tuesday. Hear the difference. Not the proposal, but the second cup of coffee being poured without asking, because after all these mornings, how you take it is known. Not the airport reunion, but the weight of a head on your shoulder during an unremarkable evening, the book in your other hand, the rain doing its small work on the window. The Tuesday scene is genius because it cannot exist alone. A poured second cup implies the proposal, the meeting, the whole history. The way one bone implies the animal, and the deeper mind, receiving the bone, is compelled to build every inch of the creature that must have carried it. So build yours now in your mind as I describe the rules, and notice how few there are. First person always, seen through your own eyes, hands and all, never yourself watched from across the room. Short 30 seconds of lived time, small enough to replay without labor. Sensory, one touch, one sound, one warmth, because feeling rides in through the senses or not at all. Implicative, an ordinary moment that could only exist inside the fulfilled life. And fixed. This is the rule that separates the schools from the dabblers. One scene, the same scene, night upon night upon night, because the deeper mind files what repeats and discards what varies, and the dabbler who tour a new fantasy every evening is not authoring anything. They are entertaining themselves at the address of longing. You will tell me, I have tried visualization for months once and nothing moved. Let me stop you there and ask the two questions that sort every failed practice ever reported. Did you enter it or watch it? And did you feel it or merely see it? Because the picture is only the doorway. The transaction is the feeling, the actual bodily warmth of the head on your shoulder, the actual small contentment of the poured cup, generated now, in your bed, in your chest, real enough that a physician measuring you could not tell rehearsal from event. Seen without felt is a postcard. Felt is a relocation. The schools had a phrase for the standard, and it is the whole examination. Make it real enough that waking feels like travel. Welcome to the scene. It is the center of this book and of every book like it that was ever written honestly. And from tonight, it is the last thing you do before sleep, every night, the same 30 seconds, entered and felt and then released into the dark without checking. The way you drop a letter through the slot and walk away, because the posted letter you keep pulling back out is never delivered anywhere. The practice, then, is the practice. The evening scene. Build it once by the rules tonight in writing if it helps. 3 sentences, no more. Then enter it at the edge of sleep. Feel it to the standard and let sleep take you from inside it, so that the deeper mind spends the whole night filing it among the things that are true. And one instruction more, which the old teachers gave with unusual force. Tell no one what your scene is. Not yet, not casually, not anyone. A scene described becomes a performance, audited by other minds, and audited scenes lose the privacy in which alone they do their work. And before you build, walk past the 5 classic wrecks, so you can recognize your own scene failing before it costs you a season. The first wreck is length, the epic, the whole imagined day, unplayable and therefore unplayed. 30 seconds, or it will not survive a tired night. The second is the spectator seat, yourself watched from across the room like an actor which files as fiction every time. Behind your own eyes or nothing. The third is the event scene, the proposal, the airport, the peak, which carries no implication and therefore builds no world. The fourth is the tour, a new fantasy nightly, which the deeper mind reads as entertainment and files with the films. One scene fixed until it is furniture. And the fifth wreck is the leak, the scene described to a friend over coffee, and this one deserves its own sentence, because it fails by a different physics. A scene told becomes a performance, and performances are composed for their audience. And from the moment another mind holds your Tuesday, some part of you is staging it for their approval instead of living it for your own, and staged scenes move nothing. The old schools sealed the work absolutely, and so will you. One small scene, felt nightly, outweighs 10 years of loud wishing. That is the entire tradition in one sentence. But a scene, however masterfully entered, meets a problem at sunrise, and the problem is you. The daylight self, walking out of that warm Tuesday into a life still visibly single, still shaped by the old story, contradicting by noon everything the night composed. Night writes and the day erases unless the day is enlisted, and enlisting it is a craft of its own. That is Chapter 5, the fitted room. There is a thing the old innkeepers understood that modern hearts have forgotten, and it was the whole art of their trade. When an inn expected an honored guest, the room was made ready before the horse was heard on the road. Fire laid, bed aired, the chair drawn to the window at the angle, a tired traveler would want it. Not because readiness summoned the guest. Because a guest who arrives to a fitted room settles instantly, deeply, with the uncanny ease people describe afterward as feeling meant, while the same guest, arriving to a cold room fitted in a scramble after the knock, spends the whole visit half-perched and never quite knows why. Now hear what this means for the person your scene is writing toward, because this is the chapter where the night work walks out into daylight. The love you are authoring will arrive. When it arrives to the room of your actual life, your actual habits, your actual self, and the fatal pattern of the wanting heart is the cold room. The life kept in waiting, the joys deferred, the self-care postponed until there is someone to care for it. The days lived like a parlor with the furniture sheeted, to be uncovered when love finally knocks. And love, arriving at sheeted furniture at a self that planned to begin upon its arrival, perches and stays a stranger in the story it was written into, and often, sensing itself the renovation rather than the guest, quietly leaves. The craft is to become, now in the single days, the person the fulfilled scene implies, and this is not a performance for the universe. It is simpler and more physical than that. Walk it through. In the life where the second cup is poured, how does that woman keep her Sunday? In the life with the head on your shoulder, what has that man long since stopped tolerating in his diary, in his self-talk, in his company? The loved version of you rests differently, spends differently, answers the mirror differently, and every one of those behaviors is available this week, unpartnered, because not one of them actually requires the guest. They only imply the guest. And a life dense with implications is the fitted room, warm before the horse is on the road. You will tell me this feels like the old advice, just love yourself first, which I have heard until it means nothing. Let me stop you there because it is both close to that and importantly not that. The old advice makes self-love a toll gate, a virtue to be achieved before you deserve arrival, and hearts have starved for decades at that gate. This is not deserving. This is furniture. You are not proving worthiness to a judging universe. You are fitting the room the scene implies, so that the night's authorship and the day's evidence stop contradicting each other, because the deeper mind believes whichever testimony is thicker, and every ordinary loved life behavior you adopt is testimony, laid down in the body, in daylight, where the old story used to testify unopposed. Welcome to the fitted room. It is what your single days become from here. Not a waiting room and not a shrine to lack, but the forward half of the authorship, every small already behavior a plank, and there is a strange, well-documented sweetness that arrives a few weeks into this work, which is that the room becomes genuinely good to live in, guest or no guest, and that sweetness, hear it clearly, is not a consolation prize. It is the address changing. It is the feeling of the wish beginning to be fulfilled from the inside out, which is the only direction fulfillment has ever truly traveled. The practice. The three alreadys. Tonight, name 3 behaviors of the loved version of you, small, physical, weekly, the kept Sunday, the retired tolerance, the table set properly for one. Begin the first tomorrow. These are not chores in a bargain. They are scenes performed in daylight, and the deeper mind, watching you live them, reaches the only conclusion it is built to reach. It must be true. And since sheeted furniture is invisible to the one who sheeted it, take the audit by rooms. The first room is the table. Look at how you feed yourself alone, the standing-up meals, the good plates saved for a someday guest, the cooking abandoned as not worth it for one. And hear what the room is declaring nightly, that the present occupant does not merit the inn's full service. Unsheeted. The proper meal laid properly for the resident. The second room is the body, the walks postponed, the rest deferred, the care suspended pending love's arrival to make it worthwhile, as if the guest were coming to collect a renovation project, when guests in every account ever written come to warmth already lit. And the third room is the calendar, weekends held vacant against a knock that has no date, evenings kept gray and available, a diary that reads to any arriving eye like a waiting room. Fill it with the life the scene implies, the concerts, the standing suppers, the small adventures taken now, because the strangest law of hospitality is this one. Guests are drawn to inns that are visibly alive without them, and no one books a room in an empty house. Guests settle deepest in rooms fitted before the knock. Fit the room. But now the authored love must travel, and this is where the story gets strange, and where the title of this book earns its second half. Because arrivals of this kind do not come up the road in plain sight. They come by a route the old schools mapped precisely, a route made of coincidence, and if you do not know its shape, you will stand at the front window watching an empty road while fate comes in, as it always comes in, through the garden. That is Chapter 6. Chapter 6. The Bridge of Incidents. The old schools had a name for the way an authored wish travels from the inner world to the outer one, and the name is exact, and you should learn it, because knowing the shape of the road changes how you walk it. They called it the Bridge of Incidents, not the leap, not the miracle. The bridge, because a composed scene almost never arrives as itself in one bound complete. It arrives as a chain of small, odd, unremarkable-looking events, each one slightly out of pattern, each one leading to the next, none of them announcing themselves as anything at all, and only from the far side, looking back, does the chain reveal what it was, the road your wish walked in on. Watch it work in the train story from Chapter 1, now that you know what you are looking at. The burst pipe, the changed job, the delayed line, the free seat. Not one of those events taken alone had love written on it. A plumber, a resignation letter, a signal fault. That is what a bridge of incidents looks like from on top of it, mundane to the point of invisibility, and this is the single most practical warning in this book. Your bridge will not look like your bridge. It will look like a canceled plan, a colleague's odd request, an impulse to take the long way, a lecture you almost skip, a repair that forces you into a shop you never use. The heart that waits for lightning steps over its own bridge daily, planks laid right under its feet, dismissed as Tuesday. So how do you walk a road you cannot recognize? Two disciplines, and they are opposites, and you need both. The first is responsiveness. When the small odd nudge comes, the impulse out of pattern, the invitation slightly off your map, the plan that falls through and leaves a strange gap in the evening, follow it lightly, the way you would follow a path that appeared in a familiar wood. Not because each nudge is destiny. Most are nothing. But bridges are made of planks, and planks are crossed by feet. And the person who declines every oddity in the name of routine has decided, without knowing it, to receive their miracle only if it agrees to come up the front drive by appointment. And the second discipline is the harder one, the one that separates the walkers from the wreckers. You must not build the bridge yourself. The moment the authoring mind starts engineering coincidences, contriving the accidental encounter, forcing doors and calling the forcing faith, the whole structure changes nature, from a bridge being laid toward you into a chase being run by you. And every chapter of every honest book on this subject will tell you what chasing builds. Nothing you want. Your work was the scene and the room. The route is not your department. You respond to planks. You do not manufacture them. And the deep test of whether you have truly posted the letter is whether you can watch an oddity pass without seizing its collar and demanding to know if it is the one. You will tell me, how do I tell a plank from a distraction, an aligned nudge from a random Tuesday? Let me stop you there, because the question itself is the trap. You do not have to tell. That is the entire mercy of the design. Planks do not require your certification to be planks. They only require your ordinary, lightly held yes, and randomness costs you nothing but an evening, while a refused plank can cost the bridge. Walk everything mildly interesting. Certify nothing. The chain will assemble itself out of your yesies without ever once needing your judgment, which is fortunate, because from on top of the bridge, as you now know, your judgment is blind. Welcome to the bridge. You are in all likelihood already on it. Work like this begins assembling its route with strange speed once the scene is entered nightly, and the first planks are almost always laid in the first fortnight, unnoticed in the shape of small dislocations, plans failing oddly, impulses arriving from nowhere, the pattern of your days developing a light stutter. Do not decorate this with superstition, and do not dismiss it with sophistication. Just walk, the practice, the incident log. A small page kept privately, on which, each evening, you note in one line anything the day did that was slightly out of pattern, the stutter, the nudge, the gap, and whether you walked it. No interpreting, no forecasting, just the log. Its purpose is not divination. Its purpose is to train your eye to see planks at all, because a month of the log will show you, in your own handwriting, what this chapter claimed, that your ordinary life is far less ordinary than it has been pretending, and that something lately has been building. And so you know planks when you stand on them. Here are the three bridge shapes that repeat through all the old accounts. The first is the detour bridge, built of blockages, the closed road, the canceled evening, the position lost, each obstruction bending your path a few degrees off its groove. And the accounts are unanimous on this hard point, that the plank most often mistaken for the work failing is the work routing. The second is the failure bridge, crueler and more precise, where the thing you attempted collapses and the collapse itself is the crossing, the venture that died introducing you to the one person who mattered in its ruins, and no author standing in fresh wreckage can see it, which is why the discipline is to walk on before the verdict is in. And the third is the stranger relay, the bridge built of hands, each incident a person, the acquaintance whose odd request leads to the gathering to the introduction to the introduction, love arriving at the end of a chain of humans, none of whom knew they were carrying anything. Which is why the walker's rule covers people too. Every stranger dealt with warmly might be a plank, so deal warmly with them all and let the bridge sort itself. Miracles do not leap. They walk on planks of Tuesday. Learn the sound of the footsteps. But there is an enemy of the bridge, and it is not doubt exactly, and it is not the world. It is a habit of the wanting mind so natural, so innocent-looking, that almost everyone commits it daily and cannot understand why their work unravels. The old teachers spoke of it the way surgeons speak of infection. That is Chapter 7. Chapter 7. The opened kiln. In the pottery towns, the firing of a kiln was a covenant with time, and every potter learned its one law as an apprentice, usually the hard way. The kiln, once sealed, stays sealed. Days of heat, days of cooling, and through all of it the work inside is transforming by a chemistry that requires exactly two things, temperature and darkness undisturbed. And every generation some apprentice, sick with hope about the pot of their life, cracks the door early just to check, just to see, just one look, and the rush of cold air does what it has always done. The glaze crazes. The clay, mid-change, shocks and splits. The checking does not observe the transformation. The checking is an event inside it, and the pot that would have sung comes out ruined by the very love that could not leave it alone. This is the infection the old teachers warned of, and I want you to see all its innocent faces, because you are almost certainly wearing one of them already. Checking is the daily audit of results, the scanning of every room and message for evidence that the work is working. Checking is the timeline math, the counting of weeks since the scene began, the deadline quietly issued to the universe and then monitored. Checking is the mood autopsy, the interrogation of your own feelings each morning. Am I feeling it enough? Is my address right? Did I ruin it by doubting on Thursday? And checking, in its most poisonous costume, is the reassurance tour, the work described to friends so their reactions can be mined for hope. Every one of these is the kiln door opening, and here is the mechanism plainly. Checking is the felt state of not yet, performed with total sincerity, and you know from Chapter 3 what the world does with felt states. It ships to them. Each audit relocates you for that hour back to the address of absence, and undoes with cold air a night of warm authorship. You will tell me, but surely I cannot just ignore the whole question for months, pretending I planted nothing. That is its own kind of madness. Let me stop you there, because the answer is not ignorance, and the old crafts knew it. The potter is not forbidden knowledge of the kiln. He is given a schedule. There is a day to open, appointed in advance, and until that day his attention lives entirely and by design in the rest of the workshop, the next clay, the wheel, the bench, the life. So take the potter's structure whole. Appoint one moment a week, the same evening, 10 minutes in which you may review the log, feel the hope, wonder honestly about progress, and then close the door and return to the workshop of your actual days. Between appointments, every checking impulse gets one response, spoken inwardly, calm as a craftsman. The kiln is sealed, and the attention goes physically to the nearest real thing. Welcome to the sealed kiln. This is the discipline that guards all the others, and it has a reward beyond protection that no one believes until they live it. A sealed practice changes the texture of your waiting. The braced, breath-held vigilance dissolves, because vigilance was only ever checking wearing armor, and in its place comes something the old potters had in their faces, that unhurried certainty of people who know that time, undisturbed, is not the enemy of the work. Time is the work. The waiting itself, sealed, becomes part of the firing, and you will feel the difference in your own chest within a week, a strange new quality that visitors to your life will notice before you name it. It is called peace, and it is what a kiln sounds like from outside when its keeper has finally stopped hovering. The practice. The appointment. Choose the evening now, 1 per week, 10 minutes, review permitted, hope permitted, log read, door closed. And this week, each time the checking hand rises between appointments, count it silently, not with shame, just a tally, because you cannot retire a habit you have never seen the size of, and most people, counting honestly, are staggered, and then within a fortnight are free. And because the checking hand rises on a schedule, learn its 3 favorite hours and station a replacement at each. The first is the waking reach. The morning hand moving for the little screen before the eyes are fully open, scanning for evidence while the night's work is still warm, and it is the costliest audit of the day, because it relocates you to the address of not yet before breakfast. Replace it with the address check from Chapter 3, 2 minutes, inward first. The second is the after hour, the audit that follows any promising encounter, the conversation replayed for grades, the message drafted and weighed, the evening spent marking your own performance, and its replacement is physical. One immediate absorbing task. The walk, the washing up, the instrument begun within minutes, before the grading court can convene. And the third is the 3 in the morning session, the oldest court of all, where the case against your hopes is heard in darkness by a judge who is only ever tiredness wearing robes. Its replacement is the scene itself, re-entered, briefly, warmly, because the same door that lets the court in lets the Tuesday in, and no mind can hold both at once. Sealed kilns sing. Watched ones crack. Every craft that transforms anything knows this, and you are transforming the largest thing you own. And now the authorship stands complete, the scene, the room, the bridge, the seal, and everything that remains is arrival, which sounds like the easy part and is not. Because the love you have written will come, and it will come wearing a face, and the face will present the last and subtlest examinations of this entire work, beginning with a problem almost no one anticipates, which is that you may not recognize it. That is Chapter 8 and Part 3. Part 3. The Arrival. Chapter 8. The Signature. Here is a strange fact from the history of this work, reported so consistently across the schools that the teachers built a whole doctrine around it. When the authored love finally arrives, a shocking number of authors almost turn it away, and the reason is always the same. It did not match the picture. The scene wrote a feeling, and the mind, on its own initiative, illustrated the feeling with a face, a height, a profession, a type. And when the feeling walked in wearing different clothes, the author, checking clothes instead of feeling, looked straight past their own arrival, sometimes for months, occasionally forever. Understand how this happens, because it will try to happen to you. The deeper mind takes orders in the currency of feeling. That was Chapter 3, and it never stops being true. What you posted on all those nights was the warmth of the poured cup, the weight of the head on the shoulder, the felt signature of being loved in a particular way. and that is what the bridge has been assembling toward with total fidelity. But the surface mind cannot resist decorating. It sketched a casting from old films and old types, and treacherously from the old sheet you struck through in Chapter 2. And now there are two documents in you, the order, written in feeling, and the illustration, drawn in habit, and they do not describe the same person, and only one of them was ever sent. So the discipline of arrival is a change of instruments. You stop judging by the illustration and start reading for the signature, and the signature is read in exactly one place, your own state in their presence, not their statistics, not the spark either, and this must be said carefully, because the spark is the most beloved liar in the whole story. What most hearts call instant chemistry is very often just the old sheet recognizing its type, the familiar poison arriving with fireworks, home tasting like home even when home was harm. The signature is quieter and stranger. It is the taste of the scene, met in daylight. That specific ease, that particular warmth in the chest that you rehearsed 100 nights, now occurring, unrehearsed, in the middle of an ordinary conversation with someone the illustration would have filed under unremarkable. Your body will notice before your mind approves. The mind says, not my type. The body says, this feels like the Tuesday. You will tell me, so attraction counts for nothing now. I am to talk myself into whoever feels calm. Let me stop you there, hard, because that is not the teaching and never was. Nobody is asked to manufacture desire or to marry a warm absence of interest. The teaching is about order and patience. Desire is real and desire matters, and desire is also the slowest arriving honest signal in the whole exchange, and the fastest arriving dishonest one. Fireworks in the first hour are almost always the old sheet. Desire that grows in the presence of the signature, kindling over weeks as the feltrightness deepens, is the new casting taking hold, and it burns longer than anything the fireworks ever lit. You are not lowering the bar. You are reading the instruments in the correct sequence. Welcome to the signature. From here forward, it is your only credential check, and it requires, in practice, one structural mercy that the illustrated mind will resist: time. The signature cannot be read in one meeting because first meetings are performances on both sides, all costume, no weather. So take the rule the old matchmakers ran their whole trade on: 3 meetings unassessed. Anyone who reaches you across a genuine plank of the bridge, anyone oddly placed in your path who is kind and unhurried, receives 3 ordinary meetings before any verdict at all, and during them you audit nothing but one reading, taken quietly afterward each time. What was my state in their presence? Braced or resting, performing or present? Was there, anywhere in the hour, the taste of the Tuesday? The practice is that rule adopted whole. The 3 meetings, the single afterward question, the verdicts postponed. And one addition, write the state reading down, one line in the incident log, because arrival season is exactly when the illustrated mind rewrites history fastest, and your own ink is the only witness it cannot argue with. And keep beside you the short table of false signatures, the 3 impostors that read as arrival and are not. The first impostor is fireworks, the instant electric recognition, and you know now what it usually recognizes: the old sheet, home in costume, the familiar wound dressed as destiny, and its tell is simple. Fireworks demand acceleration, everything now, sooner, more, while the true signature is patient because it is not afraid of time. The second impostor is relief, the profound exhale of loneliness ending, which will attach itself to almost any kind and willing arrival and call the exhale love. Its tell is that the feeling points backward, at the emptiness escaped, rather than forward at the person present, and one honest question exposes it: would I choose this company from a full life? And the third imposter is admiration, the being seen, praised, adored, delicious, and addictive, and entirely about the mirror they hold rather than the hand they offer. Its tell is what happens in their absence, because admiration evaporates between doses while the true signature persists, a settled warmth that goes on humming in ordinary rooms with them nowhere in sight. Against all three, one instrument the state reading taken quietly afterward written down. The order was placed in feeling. Read the deliveries in feeling. The illustration was never sent, but suppose the signature confirms. Suppose the meetings compound, the taste of the scene arriving stronger each time, the thing unmistakably assembling, and now comes the strangest examination of the entire path, the one this book's title has been walking toward from its first sentence. Because there will be a moment, quite soon, when they look at you with wonder and use the word everyone uses, and you will be standing there knowing what you know. What do you do with the truth in your mouth? That is Chapter 9. Chapter 9. The Double Truth. It will happen at a table, probably. Some unremarkable evening a few months in, the candle low, the conversation loose, and they will go quiet in the middle of it and look at you the way people look at whether they cannot explain and say some version of the sentence. I still cannot get over how we met. The pipe, the seat, the cancelled plan, the whole impossible chain. It feels, they will say, and here it comes, like fate, like something meant this. And the question of your life will be sitting in your mouth, because you know about the sheet, and the scene, and the sealed kiln, and the bridge you logged plank by plank in your own handwriting, and some proud, lonely part of you will want to say it. I built this. I wrote you in. Hold that impulse and hear the doctrine of the double truth, because this is the wisest page in the old schools and the one modern minds find hardest. Both stories are true, entirely, simultaneously. It is true that you authored, that the feeling was posted, the room fitted, the incidents walked, and it is equally, unironically true that something moved which you did not move, that the pipe burst in a house you have never entered, that 1,000 freedoms you do not govern bent, of their own accord, into a road with your name on it. You wrote the letter. You did not build the postal service. The old teachers refused all their lives to collapse this into one story, because collapsed either way it dies. Call it all fate and you make yourself a passenger, and passengers cannot author the next chapter, and there are always next chapters. Call it all technique and you make the miracle a gadget, and gadgets are not sacred, and what is not sacred is not tended, and untended loves, however well manufactured, die of ordinary neglect. So what do you say at the table with the candle low? You say yes. It feels like fate to me too. And you will be telling the truth, the deepest available truth, because by then, if you have done this work honestly, it will feel like fate to you from inside, despite everything you know. That is the strange grace waiting at the end of this path that no beginner believes. The authorship does not cancel the wonder. The bridge you watched being built still astonishes its own engineer. You will hold your logbook in one hand and the impossible warmth of them in the other, and find that knowing how the trick was done has not made it less of a miracle, only more of one, because now you know what the materials were. A burst pipe, a struck-through sheet, a Tuesday scene, a stranger's whole separate lifetime of their own invisible authorship, walking toward yours down a bridge built from both ends. Nobody who sees that clearly ever calls it merely technique again. You will tell me, but is the silence not a lie, a marriage founded on an unshared secret? Let me stop you there and place the last stone precisely. Nothing true is being hidden. What happened is exactly what they believe happened, an improbable meant-feeling meeting, and your inner work is not a contradicting fact. It is your half of the mystery, as their own becoming, their own unknowing authorship is theirs. There may come a night, years deep, past all fragility, when you unfold the whole of it like a map of a country you now both live in. And it will land then not as machinery but as devotion, the revelation of how long and how carefully you were walking toward them. That night chooses itself. Until it does, the work stays sealed for the same reason it stayed sealed in the kiln. Some chemistries require darkness, and the feeling of fate in its first years is one of them. Welcome to the double truth. Living inside it is the graduate condition of this entire teaching, authored and astonished at once, engineer and passenger, and its practice is small and nightly. The gratitude ledger. Each evening now, one line, thanking the half you did not build, the timing, the pipe, the freedoms that bent. Because gratitude is how an author keeps the miracle sacred, and sacred is how manufactured fate stays feeling like fate forever. There will also come, in some honest midnight, the opposite temptation, not to confess the authorship but to be deflated by it, the sudden gray thought that if you wrote it, it cannot be sacred, that the miracle with visible seams is only a machine. Take, for that night, the astronomer's cure. No one alive knows more about how the night sky works than the old astronomers, the orbital mechanics, the fusion arithmetic, the precise unmagical physics of every point of light, and go and find one, any of them, at a telescope and look at their face. Knowledge did not cost them the wonder. It deepened it past the reach of the casual, because they alone know what it takes for that light to be there. You are the astronomer of your own love now. You know the mechanics, the sheet, the scene, the bridge, and the knowing places you closer to the miracle than any innocent, not further. For you alone will stand at that table understanding fully what it took, 2 lifetimes of invisible authorship, a postal service made of freedoms, a burst pipe with perfect timing, for this particular light to be sitting across from you, asking if you believe in fate. Say yes at the table. It is the truest word you will ever say twice. But there is one final chapter, and it exists because of a failure pattern the schools documented with sorrow. Authors who wrote one perfect arrival and then, believing the book finished, put down the pen and watched the fated thing over years become ordinary and then become past. Fate, it turns out, is not a wedding, it is a genre. And the ones who feel fated at year 30 are doing something the rest never learned. That is Chapter 10. Chapter 10. The co-authors. Ask the old couples, not the enduring ones, the ones merely still there, weathered into habit side by side. Ask the other kind, the rare ones, the two who still look at each other across a 40th year with that unmistakable current, who still say and mean it was fate. Ask them what kept the feeling alive, and you will get shrugs and jokes and, if you stay long enough, the real answer, which none of them can quite articulate because they never knew it had a name. They kept writing. That is the whole secret of the fated forever. The arrival was never the end of the authorship. It was the day the manuscript gained a second hand. See the failure pattern first so you can never fall into it unknowing. 2 people meet on a bridge of incidents, feel the great mentness, and conclude, reasonably, fatally, that the mentness is a property of the match, a permanent feature installed at the factory, and they stop composing. No more scenes entered, no more rooms fitted, no more small deliberate authorship, because why author what fate has guaranteed? And entropy, which is the only force in this book that truly does run on autopilot, begins its patient work. And 10 years on, 2 people who were undeniably meant sit in a quiet kitchen wondering where the mentness went. It went nowhere. It was never a property. It was a practice, mistaken for a possession and abandoned. Now the craft of the fated forever, and notice that you already know every instrument in it, only the grammar changes from I to we. The scene continues, composed now together. The old couples do this without vocabulary. The winter trip talked into life across a whole autumn of suppers. the imagined porch, the someday garden detailed until both can feel it, and they think they are dreaming aloud, and they are entering a shared scene, nightly felt, first-person plural, and their common deeper mind files it and builds toward it exactly as yours built toward the Tuesday. The room stays fitted by four hands now, each still becoming, deliberately, someone worth arriving to because the guest who settled must go on being received. The bridge is still walked, the small oddities of a shared life followed lightly, the detour taken together, the strange invitation accepted, planks now for two. And the kiln stays sealed, which in a marriage means the fragile new growths, the reconciliations mid-forming, the tender revisions, are given darkness and warmth and no daily audit by either potter. You will tell me, this sounds like work and fate was supposed to mean the work was over. Let me stop you there one last time because this is the final door, and everything depends on which side of it you stand. Fate as a verdict handed down once is the belief of audiences, and audiences you have known since chapter 1 sit in the dark watching stories they cannot touch. Fate as a genre, written in daily, is the condition of authors, and here is what the authors know that no audience ever learns. The writing is not the tax on the miracle. The writing is the miracle ongoing. Those two in their 40th year are not maintaining a fate that happened long ago. They are inside one that is still happening, composed that very autumn, felt that very supper, and that is why it still comes off them like heat. Welcome to the co-authors. It is the last name this book will give you, and the only one you keep for life. The practice, once there are two of you, is one shared scene a season, spoken into being together, detailed until both can feel it, and then walked toward down whatever bridge assembles. And the practice until then is everything this book has already made nightly in you, carried on, faithfully, sealed, because somewhere on the road, on a route already assembling, someone else's invisible authorship is walking toward yours. And the manuscript that begins the day you meet deserves two hands that both know how to hold a pen. And mark, against the future, the 3 seasons in which co-authors most often set down the pen, so you can feel the pen leaving your hand and take it back. The first is the season after the vows, when the story feels signed and sealed, and the composing quietly stops, mistaken for finished, and its remedy is the honeymoon scene, the next chapter drafted together within the first year, because a story with no forward scene begins immediately to be about its past. The second is the season after the first true grief, the loss, the failure, the diagnosis, when the shared imagination goes dark because dreaming feels like betrayal of the pain, and its remedy is the smallest scene ever composed, one good ordinary Tuesday, imagined together from inside the hard time, not to deny the grief, but to keep one lit window in the house of it. And the third is the comfort season, the long plateau where nothing is wrong and nothing is being written, the slow entropy of ease, and its remedy is the standing appointment, the one evening a season, kept like the kiln appointment of your single years, in which the two of you ask the only question co-authors ever need. What are we writing next? Fate is not something that happens to you. Fate is handwriting you have not yet recognized as your own. Now you have seen the hand. Go and write. If you enjoyed this audiobook, I created a free ebook version for you. It's the first link in the description and in the pinned comment below this video. Conclusion: the author of The Accident. Stand back now and look at the whole map at once in one held breath. You walked backstage in Chapter 1 and saw the ropes and learned that fate is authorship seen from the front row. You took down the old casting sheet, requirement by requirement, and posted a new one in your own voice. You found the address and learned that the world ships to feeling and nothing else, and you moved. Then the craft. The one small Tuesday scene, entered and felt at the edge of sleep, The fitted room built plank by daylight, plank around it. The bridge of incidents recognized and walked and never once manufactured. The kiln sealed against the checking that cracks everything it loves. And the arrival, the signature read in your own state instead of the old illustration, the 3 unassessed meetings, the double truth held whole at the candle-lit table. Yes, it feels like fate to me too, and the pen, never put down, passing at last into 4 hands. And now you know the secret that sits under the title of this book, the one you could not have been told on the first page because it only becomes true by being lived. Love that feels like fate is not a different kind of love that other, luckier people receive. It is ordinary love, authored so deeply, so far below the visible surface, that its arrival astonishes even the one who wrote it. The wrong train is coming. It is probably, if you begin tonight, already being scheduled by a burst pipe not yet burst, in a house you have never entered on a morning that will look to everyone including you exactly like chance. Your work is the scene, the room, the sealed patience, and the walking of small planks. The rest is the postal service of the world, which has never once lost a letter that was truly posted. So tonight, there is only one thing left to do, and you already know what it is. Build the Tuesday. Enter it. Feel the cup poured, the head's small weight, the rain on the glass of a life that is already, in the only country where anything begins, yours. And fall asleep inside it, author, while somewhere out in the dark, wearing the costume of an ordinary future, your accident starts making its way toward you. Comment it is written one more time if tonight it finally means what it says. And if this book moved something in you, subscribe so the next one can find you the way everything finds you now. Right on time by apparent accident, exactly as authored. The pen was always in your hand. The ink was always feeling right. If you enjoyed this audiobook, I handpicked this next book, which will change your life.